Hello, excuse me. Today is September 26, 2024. This is the September regular meeting of the Rockport Planning Board. My name is Jeffrey LeClaire, and I'm the chair of this board. This board consists of up to 7 Rockport resident volunteers appointed by the Select Board to review land use applications, changes to zoning, and other duties prescribed in the ordinances of the town and the laws of the state. Tonight, we have 4 members in attendance, 3 of whom are in the building and 1 online. So we have a quorum, so I'm calling this meeting to order today at 5:44 p.m. So tonight's agenda consists of the following items: approve last month's meeting minutes, review the findings of fact and conclusions of law for the site plan application we reviewed last month, discuss a draft of the Town of Rockport Comprehensive Plan, excuse me, and to review the Maine Municipal Association's document, Manual for Local Planning Boards, a Legal Perspective. And then finally, we're going to review the dates of the upcoming meetings and any other business. Excuse me. Tonight and any other night, we welcome the public's attendance at this meeting. If there are any members of the public that would like to speak on any agenda item or any other business, I would ask they approach the microphone, identify themselves and their place of residence, and limit their comments to 3 minutes. So thank you, and with that, we can begin. So the first agenda item is to approve last month's meeting minutes. So Jeff, if you could pull those up on the screen so we can look at them. Do you have access to them?
I got it.
Okay, if you could just give them to Orion, he can do it.
Ryan's got it.
The last time I looked at these, these meeting minutes were not complete. And if we go down a little bit farther,
No, I added these in today, the ordinance amendment votes.
okay. So these were added in like late this afternoon, I believe, because they weren't there when I looked last. Okay, I reviewed the first half of this document and saw nothing of note, but I'm happy to review this in full now. Are there any comments in the document?
I didn't have anything in the first part of it either.
Okay, and the part that wasn't complete was basically covering each section and who provided the motion and who provided the second. And I think the results of the votes were all there.
As I say, I will ask the same one that I asked you now that I've got Orion here. There is one of these sections, chapter 600. So we know what the vote looks like. It was a 3-2 vote. So I was actually the one who recommended it because it needed. We were done talking and it needed to go to vote. Obviously, I knew I wasn't going to vote for it, but it seemed most likely that it was going to pass, and so I set the piece so we could make the vote, and then voted against what I recommended. So I didn't know if procedurally that's something we should try to avoid going forward.
I looked into that, and I saw several cases that people have voted against the thing that they provided the motion for.
Okay, good. That was just a clarity piece, and I wanted to make sure we had it right in
Yep.
here before we move past the minutes with it, that's all.
Yeah, it seemed funny at the time.
Yes.
But it's totally normal.
All right, good, thank you. Appreciate it. That was the only other question I had.
Rob or Jan, any comments from you on the minutes?
Well, Orion had a comment on page 2. he said he needed those two conditions. Is that before I looked at it, or is that?
Yeah, no, it was the photos in the SSWD report were the two conditions.
Oh. Is that saying
So
you
we're
need
good,
it from
right?
the
I don't-
applicant?
You're good,
Okay.
you're good, sorry.
You needed it from the applicant?
No, there was just a note from me
Oh, from-
that I needed to add those two conditions and go back to it.
Okay. I actually had one comment that I didn't write in here, which is SSWD. Should we define what that is, just because it's
We can,
referenced only as an abbreviation,
yeah.
or an acronym? So at the first instance, can we just call it out, subsurface wastewater was D?
I'll figure it all out. That's
Okay,
fine.
yeah.
Regarding what comes in. Okay, that was
Excuse me, Jan, any comments from you on the meeting minutes from last month?
No, I'm fine with the minutes as you guys have just amended them, yes.
Okay. All right. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the August 29 meeting as amended?
Yeah, so moved. Or do I have to actually say
Uh,
it?
No, we don't.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved by Sam, seconded by Rob. All in favor of approving the minutes? 4-0-0. Thank you. We can discuss the same subject matter, but in a different form now, with the findings of fact, conclusions of law. Lowercase c in my name
Yeah,
from now on. It's all right.
we'll do that.
So, okay, there's comments in this, so we'll start with what's here first. Rob says, is this accurate language? Is that referencing the,
Yeah, we're calling it a machine shop.
Which one was
That's what they're calling it. Okay.
it? That was in their application.
if they use the word, then I didn't get that sense either, but sure. If that's what they're calling it, then that's what it is.
I guess it's probably something
Yeah,
maybe we
I
should
thought
flag.
the application said like maintenance shed
Yeah.
versus
But
machine shop.
if they call it that, so be it.
I just didn't know if we were. I mean, I guess it's fine.
No, so what's currently there, he said is a
Quonset hut?
Quonset hut,
Yeah,
that they do some work and storage out of,
yeah.
and that's being replaced.
Right.
And then it's going into this machine shop where they're gonna do all their maintenance work.
Yeah,
Oh,
same thing.
Okay. Yeah, it's fine. I just didn't know if we were.
No, it's just a semantics thing, but it's fine.
Yep. Would you say you work in a machine shop?
No, I work at
There are
a desk.
machines. I work at a desk. Okay, the next comment was from Rob, complete pending the two pieces of information below, yes. Yeah, I think it's worth saying.
Okay. I'll do the same thing here.
Yeah.
So,
Now, is this the correct thing that we have to, in every, even if we didn't discuss it, so that there are places down below where even we didn't discuss it, it's saying that we concluded it meets it? Like, for all the districts, we didn't mention each district. We just said it's in this district, and
So where are you at?
sorry, I jumped ahead, but it's sort of in concept. So into the 900s, it lists every district in the town and says the board finds the zone is not applicable.
Yeah. So no, you didn't do it, but you don't find it could also be sufficient, but this also codifies it,
Okay.
so there's no room for error about it. We'd do it either way.
I guess, I mean, in that we have a zoning where, unless we have overlay zoning, it's going to be in only one zone. Well, no, that's not true, because it could span two.
It could span two.
How do the rest of the people feel about this? I mean, it is comprehensive to say it's not in every zone that's listed, except for the one that it's in.
Yeah, I mean, I get this in concept. I think it's probably fine in this instance, but going forward, when we're going through the application piece, if we know this is the language that we want to have in the findings of fact, that we make sure that our wording of it in that piece is that it is this district, and we find that it's applicable to none of the other districts that are currently in record, or something in that regard, so that we have this set up so that it's not something we didn't technically do, but
Right.
did by elimination, or, by exclusion, I guess is the right way to put it.
So in the next application, do you want each of these zones listed same as this, and then we just make a simple comment?
I think what Sam, perhaps you're saying is like, what we do should match what's being expected in these findings of fact. So,
But, yeah, I mean, I think it is literally just us when we're going through and finding, that this is applicable to this zone, that when we say that, we say we find it's applicable to this zone, and collectively find that it is not applicable to any of the other ones not mentioned
Yeah,
as
Yeah.
such.
I agree.
But it's just wording things, but then that clears all of this for, like I said, you have exactly what you need in the findings of fact from text point of view.
yeah,
But I think as is, we understand the
Can
intent
leave
behind
it.
this, and we're good.
yeah.
Rob? Jan, are you similarly aligned?
I am, yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you. So I'm sorry that drew us down the document. I didn't mean to jump past anything that we may have wanted to review. However, I don't see anything in between.
No comments in between.
No. I trust that the supplemental information that they provided, is that stuff you put in this, or like, was that included in the findings of facts attachments?
Which are you referring to specifically?
So we asked them to provide two pieces of information and to also check with the Public Works Director. So those three things,
Those are all in their permit application.
they're all now completely submitted
Correct.
into the permit application.
Correct.
Do we need to account for that also in our findings of fact?
I was toying with that.
Attachments?
I'm not sure, because like at time of this, it's like, this is what you need to do. So they wouldn't have it yet.
Right,
So I don't think so.
okay. This
No.
is what happened at that time.
Yep, so.
Just
once-
because that stuff has been executed during the amount of time it took to us to get to the review of the finding of fact doesn't mean it should be included, right?
Right.
Okay.
Because the permit that's issued, so the certificate of occupancy that'll be issued will be that these have been satisfied.
Right.
So once
Because we
it's
didn't
done-
actually find them
Right.
satisfactory. We requested them, but at that time, we hadn't found, we
Right,
don't want to
so-
make judgment on something that we didn't see.
Right, and then there's no real need for us to see it after the fact,
Right.
because it's not ours at this point.
Yeah.
It's just for the permit application, right?
Right.
Okay. Then good as is.
So on these conditions of approval, what I could find through it is number 4, and I'm reading your notes here. So what does that need to read exactly? Optional to remove trees?
I don't think it's a condition. I don't think it's a condition of approval. I just think it's something that maybe belongs in a different section of the finding of facts. It's basically like they had in their landscape design kind of a row of cedars in front of the
No.
machine shop.
spaced
pretty-
5 feet apart.
Yeah, it was pretty like densely spaced, and we just said you don't need. I think maybe that by the letter of the law was how they needed it.
Right.
I'm not exactly sure, and we said that they didn't. It didn't need to be that.
It wasn't actually,
dense. It was-
I don't think it was actually even by the letter of the law.
I think they just did it
It
as
wasn't.
It
yeah,
was
maybe-
sort of like they were being proactive and saying,
Right.
we've screened this entire shed from view.
right.
And-
And we were kind of saying, well, it doesn't make
Well-
sense to screen it
Well, they,
from view if they're also satisfying things that we've asked them to.
Jeff, I'm sorry, other Jeff, do you need, you good? I'm listening. Okay. I was gonna say, the other thing that they mentioned is that they were putting a window in on that side of the building, and that was part of whether or
Yeah,
not
right,
it was
too,
okay
yeah.
for them to, have as fewer trees that would be screening it, because what would,
Right.
you'd block all the light that would be letting into the building, which is what they were using it for, so I think
So
that we were all
Basically,
okay
like,
with that.
yeah, we just give them permission to
So-
deviate from
We
the.
don't need number 4?
It's not condition, it's, it was releasing them from the obligation of planting as many trees as they had shown.
Right, but I don't know if it's helpful to put it somewhere else in the document.
No, I mean,
It's
I don't,
just
they weren't doing anything that was outside of what they would be required from.
They
a code
satisfied it
enforcement
either
side.
way, so
Okay.
They were fine.
if they didn't end up planting 5 feet on center, then so be it, but we weren't requiring it 5 feet on center.
Okay. So is there anything else on
Nope.
this document? Okay.
So is there motion to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law as amended here for the site plan review application presented to this board on August 29 by Goose River Holdings LLC?
So moved.
Moved by Sam,
Second.
seconded by Rob. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor of approval? 400, thank you. So moving on to agenda item 3.
One more item.
Sorry, go ahead.
Need your approval to sign it, or
Okay,
everybody
thank
has
you.
to sign it.
So what I basically need is, because this has one signature line, is the planning board to authorize me to sign this on behalf of the board. And I need a motion to, in a second.
I was gonna
So
be-
moved.
Moved by Jan,
Second.
seconded by Sam. All in favor to have me sign on behalf of the board this finding of fact. 400, thank you.
Okay.
I will sign. Agenda item 3 is the review of the draft comprehensive plan that we got access to from the SharePoint. So it looks like it's
Yeah,
an
so
Orion show unless anyone from the comprehensive planning committee shows up.
Well,
Or we
Joe-
can
Joe
shift
said,
this in the agenda if you think that he's going to come a little bit later.
Yeah, he said he'd be down in a bit, so I'm assuming you'll walk in just a minute, so why don't we hold
Why
off
don't we
a
go
little
to
bit?
the MMA manual?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Orion asked us to review this MMA planning board manual. I think as a refresher,
Yeah,
I reviewed it in depth in some areas and in brief in a whole lot of others. I did find it illuminating. I did learn a lot from it. I don't think I'd ever looked at it too, but I think it's a good sort of instruction manual for us. So welcome any discussion of anything you found interesting.
so if any members haven't had time to read it, if you're ever confused on something, obviously reach out to me, but also this is a tool for everybody to use to guide this particular process. So you'll see in this manual, there are findings of facts and conclusions of law examples, one of which I've modeled ours off of with the help of our attorney, the current template that I use. So in that, you can get different perspectives or how situations have been handled. And they also give some cases where situations happened and what the outcome was in the court, particular debacle. So it's a good piece of information. It's a good tool if you're ever confused on something. But
And the one that's in the The one that's linked in the SharePoint is the most recent one, or?
Yes, 2017.
2017.
Yeah.
I was pointing out that there's sort of a pre-pandemic thing in here, which is like that all official business must be held and voted on in person, in physical. It's like, well, that's not really happening so much.
Yeah. So there's nothing in this that's specific, but that I wanted to point out to anybody. It's more of, this is that tool that you can go to review, to be up to date on anything. And from this, we can schedule workshops around something, like if there's a chapter or a section that's of interest, we can have a workshop to discuss it a little further. So,
I found the FOAA section illuminating the Freedom of Access Act
Yeah.
information as to what can be discussed offline outside of meetings.
yeah.
Basically, it constitutes, it's improper for more than two people to gather to discuss anything that might come before the board or board business. Email, we were discussing, is also problematic to share insights and thoughts via email between members or anyone else. It's almost as if by being a board member, you're more limited in what you can talk about than if you were just a member of the public. Like, you can't really share thoughts with other members of the board as you would if you were just a member of the public, which is kind of a challenge, because I think we're in this because we're interested in it. Go ahead, Jan.
Well, I think, we can share with other people on the board, but we have to do it in public.
Exactly.
And so that becomes the dominant issue here. I wanted to ask, Orion, this manual, is this have force of law, or is this a guidebook?
Yeah, it's a guidebook. It references some law that's in there, but like what Jeff has pointed out, this is from 2017, so it's not necessarily up to date. So if there's something that you may think, we're not following this, reach out and I can provide an updated link. So. The camera's looking at me, but.
Are there sections that stood out to anyone? There's a lot of case law that's referenced in there that's interesting as examples, and some things like where there's conflicts of interest. I think it's conflict of interest, bias, and family relationships is an interesting thing to consider in a small town like Rockport. That you may have a bias or that you don't even know about, and that's another challenge to navigate. Former board members are discouraged from, what is it? Something like there's a waiting period. Is that true? Is that something that's in effect? A waiting period for former board members to have business before the board? Thought I saw that in there as a. It's exactly, Joe.
I mean, it would look suspicious if you were leading an ordinance change and then you drop off and, you got an application before that's really robust, but, we can handle that
Right.
in a particular way.
The grandfathered uses is actually a really fun one to read. When you have a lot of things that were built prior to any ordinance's existence, and how the zoning, it's basically they want you to not encourage non-conforming uses to continue to exist, but allow them nonetheless. So expansions are dicey. anyway, I think that that's a good invitation if anyone, in the future is reviewing this and finds something that we have questions on. Orion, are you the authority on this, or is someone you would reach out to that might come to a meeting to field these questions?
It depends on it. If there's questions about it, I'm going to loop our attorney in with it, and
Okay.
if they want to participate, they can participate.
Okay.
But yeah,
Jan has a question.
go for it.
Yeah, Orion, would you do us a favor and go through and mark up, or not mark up, but notify us of the chapters that we ought to be reading, the ones that are most directly relevant to our daily work. It's a big manual to just browse through, and your eyes glaze over pretty quickly. But if you could give me chapters that I should know about,
Sure.
then I'm glad to do that.
It would also be, if you're familiar with this manual, when applications do come before us, to say like, this is something that you all might want to read in the manual because this topic will perhaps be discussed.
I can do that.
So on a case-by-case basis.
Sure, I can do that.
Because like Orion said, this isn't actually the rule book, but it's very helpful. Shall we move on?
Yep.
Backward in the agenda to discuss the comp plan. Now that our esteemed former colleague is here to help Orion represent the comprehensive plan.
Hop on up, Joe.
So I hope everyone's had a chance to review all 200 and whatever pages of this, at least in brief. I prompted the members of the board to not look at this too closely in depth and try to provide syntactical and other sorts of wording adjustments to you all, but rather, and this was something that Ryan helped me prompt them with, is that the way we use the comp plan, which you're very familiar with, is we look to it to find out how it could advise us to allow or disapprove an application that's before us if we feel like it's inconsistent with the town's goals. So that's what I've asked members to do. But it'd be nice if you both would speak to sort of the state of the comprehensive plan, perhaps where it's going, what the next steps of it are, and what kinds of feedback you'd like from us in our review of it, so we can provide it.
Sure.
Good evening. My name is Joe Sternowski, and I'm a resident of Rockport.
Thank you.
Nice to meet y'all. So I am the liaison from the Comp Plan Committee to work with the Planning Board. If I can do anything to support you, I'm at your beck and call. So a little background. I've been involved in the comprehensive plan for 5 years now. It started before the pandemic. It got off track a little bit with the pandemic, and then back together, and we had some low periods. And so where we're at now is that we've got a draft that we think is a pretty close draft document, close to final. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to have the committees in the town that do have specific expertise in certain areas to take a look at the comprehensive plan before we release this for the public to review. And so we value the inputs that different committees have and their expertise in certain areas. We'd like to get that feedback back, consider it, incorporate it as appropriate, and then that would lead up to the release of a comprehensive plan. We'd have a number of public forums to introduce the public to what the comprehensive plan is, realizing that many people don't have the time or the bandwidth to go review all 200 or 250 pages. We'd plan on summarizing that in some way so that the important points were brought out. And then after those reviews, again, depending on what kind of feedback we get back from the public, we might incorporate some of that feedback again into the plan. And then the long-term plan is that it would be on the June 2025 ballot for approval by the public. They would have to vote on the approval of that comprehensive plan. So that's kind of an overview of where we've been, where we are, and what we're looking for from you. And so certainly there are sections that are obvious that we would look for some input from the planning board. There's sections that talk about future land use, current land use. We'd hope that you'd review that closely and see if there are any comments there. And just to give you an example of other areas and other things you might want to consider, as a member of a former committee, when we had development taking place in the villages, our committee looked at the comprehensive plan to give us some color and some strategic direction as to what the town was thinking for development of the villages, for example. And so within documents such as the land use ordinance, they are very detailed specifications that can be interpreted pretty cut and dry, but that comprehensive plan adds a little bit of color to some of those sections so that there is something that's kind of on the cusp, trying to decide which way it goes, that might add some color to it. So that's the purpose, I think, of the plan. So everyone on the planning board is welcome certainly to read the entire plan, provide input to any sections that you might have some input on.
Great, thank you.
Orion, anything to add to that?
No, you did a
Please.
great job. Thank you.
I'm sorry, and you're looking not for individual things from us, I mean, possibly for the public meetings and pieces like that where we can step in, but this is specifically as
Planning
the
board.
planning board together,
Yes.
what we're giving for feedback, so whatever it is stuff we all kind of need to get together and agree on, of saying this is what we have concerns with or have areas of whatever.
That's a very good point, is that we would like a single set of feedback from the planning board. And so if there are differences of opinions within the committee or the board, we'd like you to hash those out and provide whatever you think is the best recommendation in areas. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay.
And you needed that by
Any
tomorrow?
I thought it was due soon,
Yeah.
if not past.
We had asked for feedback by tomorrow, yeah. It was sent out. That's what the comp plan committee devised. So they're gonna meet again on the 30th, on Monday, and they're gonna see what they got and go from there.
Okay. Well, considering we're not allowed to get more than two of us together to talk about anything other than outside of this meeting, it doesn't really give us a ton of time to go through it, but sure.
I'm going to say that there probably is a little bit of leeway in that. I mean, we are going to review it Monday, the inputs that we've received from other committees. But if there's input that you have, I would ask that you do it pretty soon, though, like within the next week, soon.
Yeah, so the feedback, so when we meet, I'm gonna be updating the committee on a few of the meetings I've had, and depending on how they react, it might postpone that back, but it's not gonna mess with the June vote. So if you have read through it, or if you've looked at it, if there's something that kind of comes to mind now, you can share it, and then that'll help the comp plan committee on Monday.
So I have a suggestion.
Could I just go to Jan first, since he's had his
Sure.
hand up? Jan, go ahead.
Yeah, I really feel like I'm on a railroad train here. I'm being given a 300-page document and a day to look at it. And I think that what the process is telling me is that the Comprehensive Plan Committee has no interest in any feedback, any serious feedback from the Planning Board, which has a big role in how the town turns out over the next few years. And I resent very much the process that you have gone through. You're 5 years late in doing this, according to the main statute. You're supposed to do this every 10 years. Last one we did was a long time ago. And now all of a sudden it's, oh, well, we need this all tomorrow. And so I'm just going to say that I had a lot to say about it, but I'd have nothing to say about it by tomorrow. And I resent how the committee has handled its responsibilities. That's all.
Thanks, Jan. If you were soliciting feedback from this board and it's not here? I mean, what guise would that take? What format would that be in?
And you can say you haven't had the time to properly review it, and that you will throw out something like by next month, you'll have some feedback to possibly provide. You'll look into some possible workshops.
Let me get a sense of what your dates are, Joe, and the Comprehensive Planning Committee's dates. Working backwards from the vote, it's going to go to the Select Board for their warrant article to revise the comprehensive plan. So that's going to happen, I think, in March, April. So public hearings will happen throughout the winter, or are there specific dates that you're targeting for public hearings on the,
There's no specific dates for the public.
For the public,
hearing,
I
but
mean.
We wanted to have, the Comp Plan Committee wanted to meet with all committees and planning board before they began that process and structuring it to kind of gauge, the committees, before entering into that realm.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
yes,
I
please.
think your liaison wanted to make a comment that we deferred. Did you?
Well,
The chair recognizes John Veman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
From a distance.
So, I was thinking about, if I were on the planning board, how would I focus? And, just starting to go through it now with a different lens on, I've already turned in all my comments to Orion as a select board member, and I had basically the same time frame that you guys have had so far. So it does take time, but it's possible to do it.
Well, no, I mean, I get that piece, but did he ask for the entire select board to come together and provide one recommendation
No,
back from it?
no,
And,
no.
you know,
No,
that's
I-
the piece that's the problem here, is like individually, any one of us could have had enough time
Yes,
to go through this, but if you want one thing from us, and as Joe just said, to have any kind of disagreements to be hashed out in advance,
yeah,
it has to be at a meeting, and so if we need it inside of another month,
yeah. I'm just,
then we're gonna need to have another meeting.
yeah, I'm not arguing any of that. What I wanted to focus on was sort of what kind of, how would I review it? And it might be helpful for me to offer that as a way for, because
Very.
so what I looked for, because we're tried to work with in the past with the 2004 comp plan, and when we had questions and said, where can I get guidance for this? So this document is supposed to guide the planning board in its decision making. So it is very important, as Jan says, and I think you guys do need more time. But I'm starting to look through it now with those lens on, and I look for things like when it's saying as its goals to maintain and enhance the small town character of Rockport. So I think as a planning board, what does that mean? So, you could go through it and just try to flag for the purposes of the committee those phrases that you're saying, we need more definition of this. Just flag keywords, if you would, and say, we need clarification on that, because if we come to this part of it and say, you need more workforce housing, as a planning board, how would we know what that would be? And how would we establish that? And so planning board would need some guidance in that capacity.
So if I could just add a little bit to that, from a comprehensive plan committee, we're trying to be careful. We're not telling you what to do or how it's going to be implemented. The comprehensive plan, of course, is establishing the strategic goals. And so how you get there would be up to you in the individual site plans that you review. So I think you'd agree with that. We just want to be careful. We're setting strategic objectives in the comp plan. That's it.
Right, but it's also about making sure two people can agree on
Yep.
what a word means.
Agree.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where I'm like, I put those lenses on and I try to highlight those phrases
Yep.
when I go through it.
As I say, the other thing that I was looking at this with was consistency between goals and then the individual pieces that came down later. So the stuff we talk at the top of, this is what we say are our priorities, and then you go into each section, and does that match? Because any kind of those differences is where we're going to run into trouble when we start looking at a land use piece or application. Be like, well, the front of it says this, but then the middle of it says something that's a little bit different. It might be open to interpretation. Like, those are the things that I've,
Yeah, and
We're
over
going through it
270
for-
pages, there's bound to be some of that.
well, for sure. And I think that's where I'd like to have a little bit of time to kind of go through, because you do have to kind of go through it well in order to understand if there's that, connectivity all the way through and consistency of message, right? And I think that was the stuff that I was looking and reading down through this for, and happy to kind of, when we get a chance with enough of our co-members here to talk about it, would be happy to kind of go through and make sure, because I think that is far and away, like you said, like understanding, making sure there's no ambiguous, like non-defined words that would hang on the balance of an application, and make sure that there's consistency in message from one end to the other of the document.
Yeah, there aren't, there weren't many instances, there weren't like a lot of instances where I had to go all the way to the comprehensive plan to give me personally, guidance as a planning board member. But there were those times, and particularly when it impacts the village and something new coming in, as I think Joe already flagged, was, that was important. It could have streamlined a lot of the endless meetings we
And
had.
unfortunately, in that case, we didn't find a lot of material to
Yeah.
either support it or,
Yeah, and
Oppose it.
neither pro or con,
Right, right.
it was like, great.
Yeah. No, and I think, I think my time on the board, obviously much shorter than yours, was colored more by the more recent stuff that had kind of been used. So with LD 2003 and making the adjustments to the land use ordinance and all the dimension tables and
Yep.
the different zones, that piece was something we've kind of been using as a reference, but understanding it was fairly past its expiration date, and kind of we're trying to use some of the guidance that you guys had received as the committee, but hadn't had it anywhere codified. And so for me, it's kind of been this piece where it's been a piece that we kind of needed very recently, but hasn't really been, there and consistent. If it was there, it was so old that you would have difficulty saying that it was the, voice of the town in the moment, right? Like, for making decisions that we have to make now.
Yeah,
So
and then.
I'm definitely looking forward to having this in place, and I definitely want to make sure that it's useful for us for when and if
Yep.
we need to use it.
And there's some things that, this is basically putting into play, and there's a lot of conversation generally right now about things like workforce housing and LD 2003, and, trying to do more density in a lot. And, now you guys have to start thinking, well, how many different ways could that manifest itself? And, what would be helpful to have in this document if we come upon that. And my time on the planning board, I kind of don't know if I'm grateful or kind of wish we did, but we never had a major subdivision come through or any real high concentration of units all in one place, which, can really, there's a whole section for subdivisions. And, what would that look like? And what kind of new things is this starting to foretell?
Right.
When we start to look at the town, and I would also flag in particular the growth areas. When you get to the maps here, that's, I think, serious planning board territory.
So that's one thing
Yeah.
that actually I flagged was the growth zones, which is a term that the state uses,
Yep.
that towns must have planned out as to where their aim to grow is. But there's it's kind of a nebulous term because it doesn't prescribe any kind of density. The state doesn't. And I don't think this document also gives a clue as to what does growth mean? In fact, growth zone isn't really discussed in the document, in the comp plan. It's just, here's a map for growth zones. It's like, okay, well, what do you mean by growth? So I think that's something I thought was missing was, well, what does that mean to be in a growth zone or not in a growth zone? Especially when two parcels are right next to each other, or if there already is extensive growth in that zone or outside of that zone, why was it drawn that way? So I think a little bit of
Right.
more color to that effect would help.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I don't know if this is if this is input that
Okay, we have until tomorrow.
Actually,
But yeah,
we all
growth
agree.
zone seemed to just be, here's where the sewer is.
Or hopes to be.
And, what's that?
Or hopes to be.
Yeah. And I didn't know if there were plans or if it was like something that was discussed or opted not to, but kind of specifying, like, obviously growth here is different than growth down by, Samoset or whatever. I think that would be the most helpful piece from a,
I thought there was some discussion of growth zones in some of the mid-coast growth plan that was in there also that I saw discussed. I can't remember which section it was, whether it was economic development, but I think there is some discussion. But
There's some,
because I mean, theoretically, we could
It's
take
important.
that information and change the zones, like in the land use ordinance.
right.
But not how it is now, I don't think, just because it's basically, here's 50% of the town that's specified as a growth zone.
yeah, as far as definitions and use of growth zones, LD 2003 actually did specify the greater density in the areas that were designated growth zones. And I had some difficulty with that because at the time, in our current old plan, essentially almost the whole town was considered a growth zone, the way it was defined. And so it was meaningless almost in that
Right.
it said that you could do greater density in your entire town.
Right.
Whereas I thought it should have been maybe a little bit more focused. So those are all good points. And those are things we want to look for.
Did Jan go away? No, he's
No,
not.
I
Go ahead,
can't plug
Jan.
my
Jan's got a
computer.
comment, though.
Unplug my
Yeah,
computer, Shield.
my comment is on page 20 of the draft, it says that Rockport's overall goals remain largely consistent with the 1993 and 2004 comprehensive plans. These goals include, and I'm thinking 30 years ago, the situation in the universe was very different, and that you guys have, your committee has missed the opportunity and the requirement, I think, to think about what's Rockport's future going to be given the global warming situation, the crisis in the climate. We are going to be expecting climate refugees. We are going to be expecting all of our shoreland areas to go underwater. You're not dealing with any of those things. You're not even making suggestions that we ought to think about it. So I thought that you guys took the easy way out and just said, well, listen, everything that we've been doing since the 70s is just great. The goals that we had then are the goals that we have now. We're a wonderful little community, and all we want to do is not change. Not possible.
Well, I mean, I'm not familiar with the 1993 comprehensive plan, but I am the 2004. And it seemed like a lot of what was in the 2004 was, I wouldn't say ambitious, but it was looking ahead to something that we still haven't achieved. It was supposing that there was going to be growth that didn't really happen in the past 20 years. So I think even though I think your comment's right, Jan, but I think it was sort of a little bit ahead back then, but it needs to be even more ahead now. Like it needs to be more future looking, like you're saying, than it was in the 1993 and 2004. I think that
Yeah,
there's
actu-
some things that go ahead. I'll
I was
say
going
it
to say,
later.
I kind of, in reading it, agreed in principle with Jan, with Jan. As a newish resident of Rockport, the thing that surprises me most is how affected the town is by climate change, but also not adapting, I would say. And it would be interesting to kind of explore, I think, just on a macro level, like how Rockport could potentially, how maybe we should rethink how the town does things in regards to climate.
So,
That's him.
I guess my real question would be is, we have little pieces here and there, but do we want to go through all of this right now and see what things we all agree on to hand across to the comprehensive plan committee? Or do we want to get a chance to get into it, read through these things, and then either meet back before our next monthly meeting or
I think I need more time personally.
then next month?
Oh, no.
Well,
So how much time do we think we need, I guess, is
As
the-
opposed
is
to,
the other
as
question.
opposed to talking about it right now.
Well, here's the thing, is if we had comments even in our next monthly meeting and time to discuss it, having reviewed it, we could send those along. It's not like they're going to reject them. It's not like they're going to say, well,
Right.
this is too late.
No,
We can't accept it. It's just, it didn't fit with their time frame for when they wanted the comments returned.
Right,
from
but
the
would it be
committees.
helpful, Joe, should we be doing this like next week? Or,
well,
I think time is of
Right,
the
I
importance
think,
here,
yeah.
yeah. And I agree with everything that was stated here. We're not going to ignore important comments that you make, but other committees have responded.
it's gonna move
We'll
forward.
move it along. So
there,
we'll try to incorporate them as we can.
one thought would be, as people are reviewing it, you create a shared document. Can you do it that way? The way we've,
You mean just shared for the planning board?
yeah, just for the planning
just
board
like-
to go in and start peppering your, loading it up with your.
Like we used to look at minutes, kind of
Yeah.
that kind of thing? Yeah.
I think, I mean,
It's a way to streamline the amount of time.
right. I mean, this is something that's hamstrung us as committees in the town, the public forum, is that we have to just either discuss it all now or be silent on it until the next time we come convene to discuss. And it's not the most efficient way of exchanging ideas. And, I mean, frankly, the prompting on this was basically just like, here's the document, please review. It's like, what document and for what? Review for what? So it's kind of our first time as a group being able to discuss it as to what we should be looking at, not simply even like discussing it in general. So,
And
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I gotta say that piece of like, well, we've got all the other people's comments and, we'll try to work yours in as we go. For considering how much this committee uses this particular document, again, I gotta echo Jan's disappointment in that, because it does not give us enough time to actually talk about this together as a team,
yeah.
the way that we are being requested to. And then they're like, well, okay, if you can't get it done, we'll try to work it across. Like, really? Right? I mean, this is the document that we use probably more than any other committee in the town. Like, it would be nice to be able to get our points into it and have it have the same weight and bearing as all the other ones that got a chance to meet before the day before the deadline.
Yeah. I think the plan, at least for the Comprehensive Plan Committee, was to provide it a couple of weeks in advance, and it's unfortunate that some of you haven't seen it until this evening. I know we got comments from John.
We've seen it.
I've all seen it, but what we're saying is, you're asking us to provide a recommendation for, looking at it, changes, anything we want,
Right.
together as the planning board, as
Right.
one piece and across, and we have had no opportunity to discuss it because we're not allowed to outside of this meeting.
I think what John suggested, you could provide inputs into a common document, but you can't discuss those inputs. And
Right,
so
so if we have a disagreement, how are we supposed to get that figured out?
then you'd have to get together and resolve
Have to
it
resolve
after that.
it, yeah.
What I would suggest is, just like with minutes, you have to, everybody's got to get their comments in before the meeting that is going to approve or not approve those minutes. You could set a workshop date, I don't know, a couple of weeks from today, give everybody a couple of weeks to go online and, take your time, do a little bit at a time, come back, what we've all done, I think. Everybody here has done
No,
that.
and I think that is
That's a
perfectly
pretty
fine
efficient-
and where we were headed for. It seemed an awful lot like Joe's response to that was, well, we'll try to get some of that information worked in, but we're going ahead without it.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
That was the part that it's like, we don't, even if we wanted to do it the reasonable way, which is to meet in a couple of weeks,
yeah.
it doesn't sound like that's gonna work for them, and they're just gonna keep
Yeah,
pulling ahead regardless.
I didn't mean to say that. I mean, we have a schedule that we're trying to run with because we're trying to get to our end goal of having it on the ballot in June. We know we've got all these public reviews, we've got select board approvals, getting on warrants and things like that. So we're not trying to ignore you, not trying to put you under pressure. Work as quickly as you can reasonably do to get those comments together. It can't be in 6 months. Hopefully it'd be sooner than that. And Orion, you're in charge of this process also. I would just suggest that we try to make accommodations to look at those comments and incorporate them. I mean, we're not going to ignore them.
No, we're definitely not going to ignore them. I think one of the differences between this situation and all the other committees is, the other committees don't review the comp plan against anything. So, it's just a matter of, do we have a project that's in there? Cool, great, awesome. And then we don't agree
Yeah.
with this statement or that data or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's different. And also on top of that, like Joe and John have mentioned, the 2004 plan didn't really give a lot for the planning board to really have this methodology of implementation. So
I
we're
So,
we're
I
working
mean,
with it, but.
I mean, I can, and to Jan's comments, I completely agree that we should be as forward-looking as we possibly can with knowing what we currently know. But that said, and this isn't an excuse for maybe not getting into all those aspects of the comp plan, but comparatively speaking, I look at this document versus the 2004 document, and it's light years ahead of what we had there. I mean, it's like not even a comparison in my, and that's not to say that that plan wasn't good for its time, but, this was refreshing when I finally got through it. But it really did take, at least, it was more than a couple sittings and most of the day finally to just plow through it. And I really didn't have time to spend on, say, the maps the way I wanted to. And so I've got to go back to that. So I understand. It's a very time-consuming thing just to get through individually. And then as a group to come to some kind of agreement to make a recommendation, that's daunting. So I think you guys just kind of have to think, what do you need? How, what's reasonable, and what's the best way to do it?
It might be good if you could, even this evening, maybe get your heads together and tell the committee for our meeting on Monday so we know what you're looking at, if you have some idea. Maybe it's not tonight, maybe it's over the next day or two, Jeff. Maybe you could solicit people how much time you think you need. If you could provide that feedback to the comprehensive plan committee, that would be good, so we know what we're looking at.
I mean, I think, I'm sorry, Joe.
That was it.
yeah, hang on a second.
think Jan's comment.
Jan's got a hand up for a minute. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't you guys think that this is important enough that it could wait till the November ballot next year instead of June and give us a couple of months? That you're years and years behind, and now it's hurry up and rush. And the committee that has the most responsibility, that has showing clearly the most interest. I hardly think that Parks and Rec really had much to say about the document. But for us to just say, oh, sure, go ahead, I know you worked hard, and it's a lovely piece of whatever it is. I think that the rush to the June ballot is a bad idea. And that we're not going to do this again for another 10 years. And if I know Rockport, we're not going to do it again for another 15 years or maybe 20 years. That's how we operate in this town. So if you're not going to get it right now, because you have to get it in the June ballot, why not put it up in November?
Well, as your select board liaison, Jen, I'll happily communicate your thoughts on that one to the rest of the select board.
Can you communicate my mood of thoughts also?
I will be diplomatic about it,
Oh, John.
which is uncharacteristic, but I will.
Yes. Thank you.
So if that, if it helps, I mean, figure out how much time you really need. I mean, do you really need like 2 months, Jan, or do you need like a month?
I think we need individually, since most of the people are working still in their lives, I think we need 10 to 14 days individually to go through the documents and mark them up. And I would like to have a copy that could be marked up on the workspace so that everybody can see everybody's comments. then we need at least one meeting, probably two meetings. So I would say that 4 weeks is really pushing it.
Okay,
And I will only offer to do that kind of work if I have the slightest sense that the select board will actually take it into mind, or that the committee that does the document will actually take it into mind.
well, I can find out on the second part of that question, but I think the important thing is to recognize that you as an individual, having a certain opinion about, what should be the goals and that sort of thing is not what we're really asking for here. You will have, you will have that opportunity once it gets past this next round of input. The public comment and you as an individual resident of Rockport, Jen, and what you feel about, things, that should be in the plan. This is you as a planning board member only looking at this.
I understand, John.
Okay.
Listen, this
All
is a
right, so
board
you'll
filled
get,
with
you'll get
very
more
bright
than one
people.
bite at the apple is what I'm telling you.
Well, no, I know that you want one document from us. This is a board of very bright people who all have things to say, and then we need time to meld them together so that we could give you one document. I have no intention of sending you my thoughts or anybody else's thoughts, but only what the planning board could agree on.
Yeah, okay. I mean, but as a group too, you're working as as the planning board, not as, 4 individual residents with strong opinions one way or the other about what should be the goals.
Well, I
That's
think that-
different, that's the next round of,
That brings up a great question is, what are we reviewing this for? Are we reviewing it for our own personal take on what our vision of Rockport is? And I would say that was the question you were trying to say, which was, you can have that, but bring that up as a member of the public when the entire public has the chance to review this. What we need to be reviewing this for is what the planning board does in its monthly work when applications come before us. And do we say yes? Do we say no? Do we say well, this doesn't seem to be covered in the land use ordinance, but it's consistent with the spirit of
Yes.
this document?
and that's what
Yep.
exactly what I'm saying,
Right,
Jeff.
so we don't have to, think that we need to solve every issue in this document here tonight or for your deadline or whatever. We need to understand how, as a body, we're going to use it.
Yeah. And,
That's the goal.
And with the framework that, the planning board is designed to be sort of all black and white, kind of it's there or it's not. It checks the box or it doesn't. So that's where I go with words in here that are like,
We're not strategic
is that going to
visionaries.
give, if I need a yes or no, is that
As a
going
board.
to, is that going to help me say yes or no?
Yeah.
When something, and what kind, to Jan's point of climate change, what kind of things might that push in front of the planning board, if any? And what's that going to look like? The LD 2003, what's that now going to be bringing? And if we're clearly having a crisis of housing and we're, there's going to be, I think the solution, I think, and most of the material I'm reading nationally is saying we got to build our way out of this problem because it's not just a Rockport problem, it's a everywhere problem.
Right.
That's going to mean a lot more construction, a lot more applications coming, and the volume's going to increase, density's going to, what are those?
But that opinion or that strategy, that take on the strategy, is something that is determined outside of this board's work. So this board does not
Not necessarily, I think it's
promote
fair, I think it's fair to.
the
to
goal itself.
see-
We
see-
read the goal and interpret it and promote it through the applications that come before us. Right? We're not a body that's a planning board in the sense that we come up with a plan.
No, you're not promoting individual developers.
Ex-
No,
no,
You're
no.
you're evaluating what's before you.
Exactly. We don't
But-
say, this area we'd like to see become, pedestrian-based retail shops or whatever, so that's what we want to see come there. We don't say that. We can say that individually or in some other committee, or we can go to select, what?
Comprehensive plan committee.
Or the comprehensive plan committee. But as a planning board, that's not our role.
Yeah,
So, that's why,
Right, so
I
again,
I agree with everything you said, Jeff, about you're looking at what it is just to evaluate the planning board's
right.
mission in this. Of course, it's not quite that black and white. It's not easy to separate things you know and you see on the planning board influence things you do in your personal life, things in your personal life influence what you do. So you're right. It's a challenge to keep those things separate, your personal views from those planning board impacts, but that is the goal.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that's where, John's, point of reviewing it for, lack of definition or inconsistencies, and then, like
Yeah.
I was saying, in terms of just making sure everything is the same all the way through, that is the stuff I think we need to tackle as a team, but I think that's the stuff that we need a little bit of time, again, not necessarily extended periods, but enough time to kind of go through with it, say, these are the pieces that I think were, of concern, and then see how many of them match up, and then go with that as kind of a recommendation. But I mean,
Yep.
yeah, I mean,
Here's
week and
one
a half,
one
something
thing
like that.
in the document that I flagged, which was the implementation strategies, and there are numerous. There are over 12 that the planning board, amongst others, is tasked with implementation. So it ranges from addressing housing needs to determining where a new industrial park should be located, simplifying the zoning district, the zoning map. There are a whole number of things, but that seemed ambitious, and which is great, but I don't know how it actually happens. It's like, how does the planning board join with the select board and the town planner and others to do these things? I mean, it just seems like pie in the sky unless you can actually say, here's how it would happen.
So with the responsibilities portion, that can change at any point in time. It's just
Right.
that's a requirement by the state. We have to put somebody responsible. So you read it, it's like, okay, we think this group of people. And it might be that group of people when it comes time to might not be. Ultimately, the select board's gonna decide who really is gonna be responsible for most of it, so. If you think the planning board shouldn't be on one of those, we can take it off. If you think you need to be on more, we can put you on, but ultimately, it's just one of those, that's a section that's kind of hard to do.
It's more of a matter of, if you're gonna put it in the document, then you should actually have a plan on how to implement
Yeah,
it.
but that's kind of hard. I mean,
Not down to like, okay, when are we meeting, guys? But I know you have to put something in there for who would be responsible for it, but that's a lot of what I saw in the last, and I've seen a lot in other comprehensive plans, is this, we're gonna build the city of the future, but we've got no one in charge of doing that. I know that your role is very important in that, but like, unless you actually are at least touching on what that process might be, by which any of these things might happen, it's just a list.
yeah, I hear you there. And that process would come after it. Like if we do believe, okay, that's an item we do need to move on now because of whatever, maybe it's grant funding that can fund this. Great, we got this group of people here that might be the group of people we pull together, or we might have other people that we pull together. And we go from there. Then we figure it out at that point in time. But, because if we say we should take these 3 steps in making that determination, that might be today, those 3 steps, but in 2 years down the road, it might be a few different steps.
Sure.
So that's why we don't go into that level of depth.
for sure, but, there's one, like, say, considerations to make another industrial park if possible, timeline ongoing,
Yeah.
meaning it's
ongoing.
currently happening, but we're listed as
No.
part of
No,
it.
that means 10 years
10
plus.
10 plus years. It's just, I understand what
Ongoing is
ongoing
not-
means.
Yeah, no, I mean, that
not
piece
the
of, like,
best word for it.
rolling along through, but like, that's the piece of, like, you reading through this part, we see that something there, like, this is happening now. So as the planning board's part of it, I'm like,
Yeah.
are we supposed to be doing this right now? Like,
I love that agenda.
Well-
that's kind of a,
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, there's probably a bit there we can clear up, but in the 907 district, the industrial component is allowed. So if something in a certain area is becoming more industrialized, like applications are coming in, it's coming that way, maybe we should go through and zone that industrial proper and then go through some different efforts. And the
Yeah.
planning board would very much be a part of that process.
And so analogous, it wasn't in the comprehensive plan, I don't think, a strong statement about housing. But the planning board last year looked at LD 2003 coming out, looked at housing and the way that we had addressed it with dimensional guidelines and tables and such in Rockport, and made a decision on our own that it needed to be updated. And so it was a recommendation from the planning board that was not unilateral. It was put forward to the select board. I know there was a lot of discussion in town staff about it, and that's how that proceeded through the process. So in some cases, if the planning board does see these things, you may be a support role, or you may take the initiative, I think, to actually push some of these things forward.
I think we're capable of doing any of
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
sort of things. I said I sort of maligned us for not being able to do. It's more so that we weren't tasked to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor of, and I don't know if others are, but of having our role suit the needs of the town.
Yeah.
But I don't want to, be bumping elbows with
No.
somebody where we're not wanted.
You're not.
Right. And again, it doesn't mean you're going to have to push all these points through on your own. I'm going to guess, it's not defined now, but I'm going to guess it's going to be a combination of different committees and boards in the town that decides that this is important now. Planning board, can you provide your inputs? Go do this.
Yes.
Would it still be reasonable, Jeff, to try to think about this, sleep on it, and provide a letter as to how much time you think might be needed before Monday to the comp plan committee, or you already have
That's
that
reasonable.
answer tonight?
The last item on our agenda was to discuss our future dates. Knowing that, Orion, you're out for some portion of it, which would cover our next meeting. So our next meeting is scheduled for October 24th,
Correct.
and you're out 17th to the 24th.
Correct.
So, I mean, just to be frank, like if we're going to have a workshop type meeting, then you need to be present.
Yes.
Ideally, somebody from the comprehensive plan to be able to also be a second set of ears. I mean, ideally, it would have been the entire comprehensive plan committee and us. I'm not sure it's easy to get two committees to come together in one meeting, but just to have a bit more dialogue. But representative's fine. But seeing that you're not here 17th to 24th, I had also recommended our November meeting to defer to December because takes place on Thanksgiving, as I think it does every year. So we were looking at December 12 to be the meeting that covers December and November. And then October 24, we need to figure out if it moves later or earlier. So if it were later, it would effectively be Halloween, the 31st, which is the last Thursday in the month, or earlier, which would be before the 17th. And I don't know what alternate days of the week work for us. So I'm looking at my calendar.
Yeah, I've got mine up.
So Orion, you're not here on the 17th
Not here on the 17th.
or the 24th.
Or the 24th.
Okay.
I am at a conference the next week, but I am available remotely. So if there's a meeting that's going to happen on, say, Halloween, I can do that. I don't know if y'all want
Do you
to meet on
anticipate
Halloween.
any applications in the
I've
next
got-
couple weeks?
Nope. People need sewer. I've got pending stuff dependent upon if sewer is solved. So no, right now.
I don't have the same level of expertise, but I'm willing to help you in any way I can.
Okay.
I've got a little bit of perspective from the planning board, and I've been on the comp plan committee. So whatever I could offer is help out, more than willing.
Well, let me ask the members of this committee. So it's also unfortunate that two of the members of the committee are not even here tonight, and I'm sure they have opinions they'd like to share on this document. So for us to have had a fulsome review of it tonight was just not in the cards. We had 2 weeks with this document since you sent it. I'll ask everybody, how much time do you think you'd prefer before we feel like we've had a good chance to review? Like, how much time do you need with this document?
Before you come back together as a group.
Right.
A week, 10 days on it.
I can do it in a week.
1 week to 10 days. Jan,
Chance
you,
of 10
you want 6 months or something, but
No, I know, week, 10 days is fine
Week to 10 days.
for us to get together as a board.
okay.
Yes.
October 7th that week. Are there any days?
The week of October
I
7th?
have a class on Mondays for the next few weeks that runs from 6 to 8.
think Thursday and Friday are not.
Monday,
good for
Monday
me.
is not a good time for me.
Sorry, which day did you say?
October,
Sam?
October 8th is all right.
October 3,
Yeah, October 3, and 1 week from today.
Thursday. I can do that. Thursday, wait. Yeah, October 3.
Yeah.
I've got,
I'm going to be in Portland until 2 o'clock, so I can make a meeting that day.
Okay, Orion, you said you're,
I can go, if we can kick it up earlier, we're kicking off, the Harbor Strategic Task Force, is kicking off on the 3rd, so at 6 PM I'll be busy on the 3rd,
Is that meeting here?
yes,
So if we got here in advance of it, you wouldn't have to worry about commuting anywhere?
correct.
so if we did it 4 to 6 or something,
Yeah,
I mean, that's in the middle of my workday.
because you're on another time zone, right?
I mean, not,
That too.
4 o'clock. So I could devote some time, but I couldn't commit to like 2 hours in my day.
Are you free at 5? I'm just wondering if there would be a partial meeting for you, or,
Yeah, I could come at 5.
okay.
I mean, even like 5:30, I still need
I don't
to-
want to exclude your availability, but I'm just trying to gauge.
Yeah. And then we've got.
I think 2
some
hours
more.
seems like an adequate amount of time to review.
Yeah, very much so. I think
Yeah.
2, 1.5, 2, somewhere in there is going to be where we need. Again, we're not going through this for copy.
Right.
Although somebody should, real quick. by the
Somebody
way.
should, yeah.
Copy editing.
You need
on
to hire
this
an
needs-
editor.
yes.
Needs help.
Yeah.
No, yeah, no,
But we're
there's,
not doing that. We're talking about other things.
Yeah.
no, don't worry about editing, I've got all that marked up.
All right.
Anyway,
But
I mean,
yeah,
I could start something at 4. Is it Wednesday or Thursday?
Thursday the 3rd.
Well, first off, I guess it'd be, is there anything in this room in advance of that meeting? Is it just you guys prepping into it?
yep, just prepping in.
Okay.
I could start something, but I wouldn't be able to do 2 hours.
For
No,
sure.
I don't think we need 2 hours. I'm just thinking that we wouldn't go more than 2 hours.
We're trying to figure out a way to make sure we were done by the
Yeah.
time they needed the room.
Yeah. So,
Best for me would be about 5, to start around 5.
Yeah, if we started perhaps a bit earlier than that, so we could have just a little bit of buffer. 4:30 perhaps.
yeah, and then, I mean, I'll
And then,
Yeah,
you know,
write
people-
out my stuff.
guys come in
if I
as
need to
they
leave,
come
yeah.
through. But if you can get there at 5, we can incorporate into where we're at and kind of go through. But I think if we can get a rolling start on it.
Would we prefer a document to review?
Oh, in advance,
mark
for
up
sure.
To
Yeah.
mark up kind of document, not a PDF, but
I'll see what I can do
A
on
Word
that.
file of some sort. Even if you
It's
just
in
pull it.
InDesign. I think I can.
Oh, it's in
export-
InDesign.
Yeah,
you can export it to
There are-
Word.
there
If
are
it's ugly, it's
translators.
fine. It just
Okay.
needs to have the text in it.
I'll see if I can do it.
I exported it to Word and then PDF, and
Don't
that's what I
PDF,
sent
just
back
Word.
to you.
You did that? Okay.
Are you saying you
I
already?
mean, even if you use PDF, I've done notes and
Then-
comments on
yeah,
PDF.
just keep it in Word.
On,
That's fine.
on SharePoint though, they
Oh.
want to try and keep all everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you import a
I'll see what I
Word,
can do, and I'll do that
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
so you guys are on October 3rd at 4:30,
Yep.
4:30, okay.
possibly 2
Workshop.
hours? Workshop,
Well, no more than an hour and a half. It's got a hard stop at 6.
okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Which is good.
Yes. This
We're
room,
saying 4
1
o'clock?
week, 4:30.
4:30, Jan.
I will do my best, but we'll probably be late.
That's fine if you're
it's
late.
fine. It's
Yeah, and
fine.
there, you know,
We'll
Scott may
cover
have a
everything.
conflict and, you know.
Like
Yeah.
I said, we're going to try to get the notes. If we can get an editable document beforehand, we can all get our comments and stuff in advance so that we'll know the pieces that you have if we start on a section before you get here, Jan.
Okay.
So, 4:30 to 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
October 3rd, okay.
So does that mean
want-
our meeting on the 24th is not happening?
So, no, I think we still need to figure out, do we have the October meeting at the end of the month? I would say that if we don't have any applications, then we don't need to have a meeting simply to review meeting minutes from this meeting.
Well, you could also use it to go another conversation about the comp plan if you want to.
True. See if
Just
we
have
have
it there as a
more to say.
placeholder, and if you don't need it.
That's
for
fine, yeah.
application-
Then we could perhaps just hold October 24.
Or the 17th even,
Neither of those Orion would be able to attend.
okay. Oh, Ryan's not here on the 24th?
Nope.
I'm traveling on the 24th.
What about Friday, the 25th?
My brother's, well, do you want to meet on a Friday?
No.
I-
Well, I mean, we can,
What about the following week?
yeah, do we want to do it on Halloween night?
That's scary.
Uh,
Sorry, couldn't resist.
I mean, the other piece of this is, do we just want to have a Zoom only meeting like on the 30th?
Wednesday, the
That would
30th?
That will be fine with me.
You can.
I mean,
Yeah.
if it's going to be pretty simple and straightforward,
You might not have a meeting, but
We might not even have one.
Or the
but no, just
space or your available.
availability.
no, that week I will be remote. I can
Right, but I'm
attend.
saying if we're all remote for that meeting, it won't matter if, like, we can have it on a different night of the week, you don't have to worry about trying to make sure.
If
there's
we have
room
no
someplace
applications, we certainly don't need to be
Correct.
in person, and we probably don't have the room if it's on a day other than Thursday, so,
And so on another
yeah.
perspective, let's see, they'd have to get it to me by the 6th. Well, actually, I'd have to make the completion status by the 16th. So I'd have to have that application by probably the 9th. So I would know by October 9th if
If it was going to be anything
we're
other
going to
than
have
that.
any applications. So that works for me, October 30th.
Okay, so we'll plan to meet in October on the 3rd and the 30th online,
What time, the 30th?
5:30.
5:30, yeah.
Okay, so usual time.
Are you planning on discussing comp plan at that meeting? Possibly?
Possibly.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I'll
we'll
plan
see what
to-
happens on the
All
3rd.
right, I'll put it on my
Yeah, I would
schedule.
say the 3rd is going to be the lion's share for sure, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. There are programs that online that will change a PDF to a Word document without any problem.
However it gets to us, as long as it's in the SharePoint kind of thing, I think that's the easiest to do. Marking up,
That's the best.
yeah. Doing a PDF is tough.
Yep.
Okay, so everyone's on board with in November not having that meeting on Thanksgiving Day and just moving it to December 12, which is a Thursday,
Yeah,
Yep.
we can cover both.
which
December
cover
and-
both November and December.
Yes.
Is that legal, Orion?
Give me a second. To combine, yes.
Yeah. As long as we announce it.
So
Okay, so
combining to
Thursday, December 12, 5:30.
That works.
Thursday, December 12 at 5:30.
Yep.
That's a date that Scott has also said he's good with.
So there, yeah, okay.
Any other discussion or new business from the board or from the public? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved?
Seconded.
Seconded. All in favor of adjournment? This meeting's adjourned at 7:07 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Use my